Okay, I think we're ready to go here. So first, I want to thank everybody for being here, taking the time out of their day to view this webinar. I really do hope it's what you need it to be to get the information that you need to decide whether or not this opportunity is something that you would like to participate in. My name is Matt Corsell. I'm a contract management specialist with the Office of General Services, and we're administering this grant opportunity on behalf of OCM, and I know that I can speak for both agencies when I say that we're really looking forward to working with grantees on this particular initiative. So what can you expect to really get out of this webinar? First, this is a webinar, as you could imagine, that's for prospective applicants for the Community Reinvestment Grant Program. And it's an opportunity for you to perhaps get some of your questions answered throughout the RFA presentation here. What we'll be doing with questions is taking them all via chat. We won't be allowing anyone to speak given the volume of the attendees right now. It lends itself to collecting all the questions, and then we're going to issue a Q&A addendum to the RFA along with all of the other questions that we received via email. So any questions you have, put them in the chat. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to get this after this webinar is complete. We'll be able to take this recording, put it in an addendum, and then from there you'll be able to view this webinar at any time, as well as we'll be releasing another addendum, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So any questions you have, please put it in the chat. This RFA presentation, we're going to be highlighting some important areas, but the expectation is that we are going to be giving you a highlight of some things that we really find to be important. It's not going to be a deep, granular dive into the RFA, and it's still expected that the applicants who are interested in this opportunity review the solicitation package in depth so that you obtain a full understanding of the RFA expectations. I would continue to remind potential applicants to review and continue to view the OGS bid calendar link so that you're staying up to date on any addenda that do come about, as I mentioned. And the newest addendum will always be the first page of the RFA document. So when you click that link on the OGS bid calendar website, you will see the latest addendum that we've issued. The Q&A will be considered an addendum, and as well as the addendum that we're going to be issuing, and this one will be coming before that, which is going to be the removal of Attachment 3. Attachment 3 is or was a form that we said applicants needed to fill out to answer questions or ask questions, but we're going to remove that requirement. And if you already submitted your questions and you didn't use that form, or you did use that form, we're still going to accept it. You don't need to resubmit your question to us. We're just removing Attachment 3, and that'll be in a forthcoming addendum probably by the end of the day today. So it's a good thing because it's less that you have to do. It's simply a form that we were thinking of originally having applicants fill out to ask a question, but it can be done via email, sent directly to myself and or Jessica McDonald. Both of us are designated contacts on this RFA. And as a reminder, the application, or rather the question due date, is November 8th. So make sure that you get your questions to us by that time, because we want to make sure that, if you have any important questions that you want to ask that's pertinent to you developing your application, that it's not missed. So we've been compiling them, and please continue to do so. You have until the end of the day on November 8th to get us the questions. Now, those are questions that are related to the RFA and interpretation of the RFA and, getting more clarification on what is asked of you. But if you continue to have questions regarding any of the technical related areas, such as like eGrants, because the eGrant system is a new system that all of us are going to have to learn, and it's a system in which applicants will be submitting their applications through. So make sure that your eGrants questions continue to come in. Those can continue to come in past November 8th because it's not related to the RFA. It's just you need help navigating the system. And those questions should be directed to the grantsmanagement@its.ny.gov email. So technical questions should be sent there. Again, that's grants management, and we'll go through this again so you don't have to feverishly write. Grantsmanagement@its.ny.gov, and those questions can be asked up until the due date because, again, if you're having issues technically, then you should get those issues resolved. But the deadline, again, as a reminder, is November 8th for any other questions. Our anticipation of posting the answers is November 22nd. So November 22nd is the actual date that we're targeting for the release of our answers. All right. Can you still see the slide? Can everyone still see the slides? I want to make sure. No, I'm not sure why. Let me see if I can get it back up. Nothing changed on my end, but I'll see what's going on. Okay, I think I reset the screen sharing. It looks like things should be back up here. So, okay, so let's go through the agenda. And what I'm going to be doing at the beginning of this is giving everyone some introduction and program background. And then I'll be turning it over to OCM to review some of the sections of the RFA. And then we'll have some final remarks at the end of the presentation. So again, make sure that all questions are sent to one of these two. You don't have to send it to both of these contacts, both myself and Jessica. You can just send it to me if you'd like. We're compiling them. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the cutoff for submission of questions to us via writing is November 8th. I've had some phone calls, and if you do call OGS, there's very little that I can say, which is why I will probably just tell you on the phone to send an actual question in writing. So it's not considered an official question until you actually put it in writing. And as I mentioned also earlier, as a reminder, attachment 3 is no longer going to be a requirement. It was simply a form to fill out to ask a question. That's not going to be something that we're asking. And the due date of applications is December 13th, 2024 at 5 o'clock Eastern time in eGrants. We're not accepting paper applications. So I know that may be something some of you have done in the past, paper applications, emailing the application. Those are not acceptable forms of submitting applications. It's all going to be eGrants. And we'll show a little bit of that as we move on as well, because we do have a little bit of a demo of sorts with our ITS team. So we'll get to that as well. So some of the highlights of this opportunity, if you didn't already check it out, and again, I would really encourage everyone to review the RFA in its entirety. But big highlights here, the total amount that's going to be available is $5 million. That's the total pot of money. Each individual grant award will be $100,000, no higher, no lower. So it is exactly $100,000 that each award will be. And every contract that is a result of this RFA is going to have a contract term of April 1st, 2025, ending March 31st, 2027. So it's a 3-year term. And we do encourage applicants to wait until the Q&A is posted to submit the application. Now, that doesn't mean you should wait until, again, I'd recommend that you don't wait until the 22nd to start your application, because there's a lot of other things that need to be done prior to submission. In other words, making sure you're pre-qualified in SFS. That's a really, really important piece. And if you're not already registered with SFS, you need to be registered with SFS to be pre-qualified. Being registered with SFS is not the same as being pre-qualified, and we don't want to disqualify anyone if you're not pre-qualified in SFS. We won't even look at the application if you're not pre-qualified in SFS, and there are several places you can go to get actual information on where to and how to actually get pre-qualified. We'll go through some of that a little bit later too. But pre-qualification, I cannot stress it enough, is very important. And it's not just important to get pre-qualified now. The pre-qualification needs to be current through through the application due date. So that if you're pre-qualified the day before and you fall out of pre-qualification the day of, your application won't be even considered for evaluation. So make sure it's the due date that you are current through. And I would, if you're concerned about it, check it the day of the due date. I mean, so that's the key point. You may look and say, oh, I'm pre-qualified right now, but if you fall out of pre-qualification status in the next, few weeks or up to the 13th of December, and you don't realize it, then, you're not in a good spot. So, okay, so some of the key events that you'll see in the RFA on page 2 of the RFA is right here. So we went over some of the submission of the questions is November 8th to myself and or Jessica. We have the written response estimated at November 22nd. So it may be a few days before, it may be a few days after. We may hit it right on the mark, but it'll be on or about November 22nd. The due date is December 13th, and we're projecting the notification of awards to be February 19th. So keep that word projected in your minds, because we may be able to do it a lot sooner. We may take a little extra time, depending on the volume of applications we get, to issue awards on February 19th. So if you see that in November, say February 19th passes, don't think maybe you weren't awarded. You may have been awarded, we just haven't got them out yet. So, all right, so there are 8 sections here to the RFA, and we'll go through some of these. The last section on Section 8, the reference information, we're not going to have a slide on that, and the reason is because it's something that I think applicants should read. It is informational. It's really more of the source of the data that OCM used to come up with their methodologies. So I would recommend that everybody go and just read Section 8. So you're not going to see a specific slide on it. So just wanted to point that out. So at this time, I'll be back towards the end of the presentation But what I want to do now, I'm going to turn it over, if I can unmute him here. Bear with me, my computer is a little bit slow this morning. I think it's because of the volume of people on the webinar here. So let me see if I can unmute Matt Wilson, who is the director at OCM, and he's going to take you through the RFA. So hang with me right now. I'm going to try to unmute him.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just checking that you can hear me. All right, great. I see that we have 414 participants, which is very exciting, and I want to thank everyone for your interest in the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. My name is Matt Wilson, and I am the director of the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. And my purpose here is to walk you through sort of the core part of the RFA and highlight some of the key issues you should be mindful of. So Matt, once you get the slides back up, I am ready for the next slide. Thanks,
I'm
Matt.
working on it. No, yeah, there we go.
Perfect. So the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund was established in the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act. And the purpose is to reinvest in communities disproportionately affected by prior federal and state drug policies. And the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund is governed by the Cannabis Advisory Board and administered by us at OCM. And the current shape of this request for applications follows the guidance that the Cannabis Advisory Board gave in the development of this first year. Next slide, please. And the main contours of that is that this RFA is targeted at 501c3 organizations that are serving young people, somewhere in the range of 0 to 24 years of age, addressing one of three areas: mental health, housing, and workforce development. And I have seen some questions in the chat sort of asking, what if you're working with a subset of people in this range, say 10 to 16-year-olds? Yes, that is absolutely eligible. You do not need to address the full age bracket here, but we're aiming that the beneficiaries are ultimately young people within this age range. Next slide, please. So there are some minimum qualifications that you should keep in mind. First is that the lead applicant needs to be a 501c3 organization. I will cover a bit later the question, what if you're not a 501c3? What if you're a fiscally sponsored project? What if you're working on getting 501c3 status? There may be a way for you to partner with an organization, but I'll cover that a bit later. But the lead applicant does need to be a 501c3, and you need to provide proof either of an IRS tax exemption letter or your most recent 990 tax filing. The lead applicant must provide services and programs for young people. You must be pre-qualified in the statewide financial system at the time the application is due. And my colleague, Kristen Hamilton, will cover that in greater detail later in this presentation. You need to submit, of course, a complete application and all the required appendices and attachments by the application due date. And this last point that you must sign and submit the addendums to this RFA, as Matt Corsell mentioned, we will be issuing a number of additional addenda to this RFA that you will need to sign and upload into the eGrants portal. Next slide, please. So I will now go into a bit more information on the RFA. So the full amount of the award is $100,000, and that's what you need to apply for, not more and not less. And I see some questions there around the duration of the award and how it must be spent. So the award is for 2 years. Matt Corsell misspoke and mentioned a 3-year award term. It is a 2-year award term. And you can spend down on that award according to the timeline of your project. So it's not $50,000 in the first year, $50,000 in the second year. Once the award has been issued, you will be able to utilize those funds according to the timeline of your project. So if that means you will fully spend down the award in the first year, that is acceptable, or if you will sort of spend down over the 2-year period or somewhere in between. These funds should not be used to supplant existing lines of funding. So if you already have funding for an activity, you should seek reimbursement from those existing sources before you seek reimbursement from this award. And so it can be used to expand a current service or program you have, or develop something entirely new. And this last point is about providing services in more than one county. And we'll cover this a bit more in how we are going to go about selecting awards. But if you are proposing services in more than one county, you will need to submit a separate application for each county that you will be working in. So it is one application per county. And in the RFA, we provide a number of details and sort of example scenarios. What if I'm working in this county and that county, or multiple organizations? So please take a look there for additional details on this point. Next slide, please. So I want to point people to this section of the RFA 2.21, allowable funding areas. We have taken a sort of wide understanding of what can be sort of done in the name of mental health, housing, and workforce development. We do not have a very narrow definition of these 3 program areas, and so are open to, sort of a wide array of how your project or programming might have a positive impact on one or more of these 3 areas. So do take a look at that allowable funding areas to give you a sense of what's in play. And in line with the mission and the purpose designated by the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act, we aim to serve communities that face disproportionate harms associated with prior drug policy, disproportionate enforcement, and incarceration. And there will be a number of opportunities in your application to articulate how you are working with that community, how you are identifying them. But core to us is that these funds go to benefit communities that were disproportionately harmed by past drug policies. So I'm going to now hand over to Kristen Hamilton, the Assistant Director of New York State Grants Management, and she is going to walk us through the statewide financial system, eGrants, and what you need to do to register and pre-qualify. So I will hand over to Kristen, but I see we have lost the slides again.
Yeah, just bear with me. I need to exit the slides to unmute Kristen, so bear with me.
Yep.
All clear.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thank you. My name's Kristen, like Matt said, and I am the Assistant Director of Grants Management for New York State. And I'm going to talk just real briefly about the application process from a technical point of view. For those of you that aren't aware, this RFA is being conducted in our new OCM eGrants system. This is a separate system from the statewide financial system, or from those of you that were here from a long time ago, the Grants Gateway. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that will interact and what you will need to also do within the statewide financial system for pre-qualification. So you will be working in two systems in order to complete both things that you need to do in order to successfully apply for this grant. The very first thing you're going to need to do is register for the OCM eGrant system. If you have not done that in the last 2 weeks, you are not registered because it's brand new. So if you haven't done that, we're going to talk in a moment about how you will. Once you are registered, during our availability period, which has opened, you will be initiating, completing, and submitting your grant application in the OCM eGrants system. And you'll be doing that by our due date and time that's listed in the RFA. At the same time, you will be making certain that your organization is pre-qualified in the statewide financial system, again, by the due date and time. Matt made a good point in the beginning that, you might be pre-qualified at this point in time, but you want to make sure that you are also pre-qualified at the due date and time. And he did say something about you can go look the day of the application due date. I would suggest not doing that. Please do that prior, because if you did it on the day of the due date, we're not going to be able to necessarily get you approved if you weren't pre-qualified. You're going to want to be checking way earlier, a couple weeks, now. And you can see, we have videos that I'm going to show you where to go to get them. Those videos about pre-qualification will actually show you directly where to go, what page to go to, where you can see right now what your expiration date is. So you can go today, if you're in there, and see, oh, it's going to be November 15th. And that's going to tell you, oh, I'm going to expire before the due date. I got to get in there and get it updated. Additionally, you'll be getting notifications if you're in there and you're expiring. You will be told, hey, you're going to expire, please go in and pre-qualify. So both those things need to be done by the due date and time in order to be evaluated for this funding. Once that happens, we will open you up for the eligibility review. Okay, next slide, please. So first step, register in the OCM eGrant system. Right here, we have the QR code. You're going to be able to click on that or use your phone, go there, and you're going to show up at our OCM eGrant system. And we're going to ask you to fill out a very simple form. online. You don't have to mail anything, email anything. It's all online. We do need the head of your organization to be filling out this form. We have had to reject some forms because people who are not the head of the organization are submitting it. We're looking for your CEO, your president, your executive director, the leader of your org, the person who's like the big boss. That's who we're looking for. And that's for security reasons. These are powerful systems. We want to make sure that the right person is authorizing this account. And that person is who is going to be responsible for setting up and working with people who will be setting up your user pools. So they can be setting up your other users, or they can set up a different user to set up your other users. But what will happen is this person is basically the one with the keys. So you want to make sure that that's the right person and it's the head of your organization. Now, we do need an SFS ID, a supplier ID, in order to register you in OCM eGrants. When you're filling out your form, if you don't know it, if you don't have it, you don't know it, leave it blank and submit your form. If you have an SFS ID, we're going to go ahead and register you. If you don't, we're going to work with you. I'm going to contact you and we're going to help you get one. You don't need to worry about anything. We're going to email you. We're going to talk to you and walk you through it. Any questions that you have about registration should be directed to this email here. And it'll help us a lot if you put OCM eGrants registration in that subject line, because we do deal with a couple of different systems. Now, please, 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 please do not submit duplicate registration forms, okay? I know that the registration form that you are filling out does ask for a username and password. I think I've been told that what people think is as soon as they submit it, they think that will be active. So they go and they try and use it, doesn't work, and then they submit another form. Don't do that. It's not going to be active until we approve it. So we really just need you to wait. Do not submit duplicate forms. We will let you know the next step if there's a problem or if we need something else from you. Okay, thanks. Next slide, please. So the other step we talked about was pre-qualifying in the statewide financial system. I know that we have some, brand new organizations, so I'm going to give you a 2-sentence, discussion about what pre-qualification is for those that don't know. Pre-qualification is a system whereby our not-for-profits are able to have all of their documentation and basically be contract ready prior to applying for a competitive RFA, RFP, any type of competitive funding, grant funding throughout the state. So this is basically a way to check ahead of time that you're all set and you're ready to go. Like we said, you have to be pre-qualified at the date and time of the application due date. If you're not, we're not going to be able to look at that application. And as part of the process, when you go in to actually apply for pre-qualification, one of the questions is choose a state agency, and it's generally like the state agency you do business with. We then will route that to a pre-qualification specialist, and that's who's going to review your application. They're all reviewed on an even scale. We have they all review based on the same manual. There's not different criteria for different agencies. But that's how we've just decided to do it. You'll note that the Office of Cannabis Management is not one of our agency choices at this time. So we just choose an agency that most closely aligns with whatever your mission is. If you're homeless, you work with homeless people, you might want to pick OTDA, things like that. Okay. Any questions about pre-qual, you should send to our help desk, our SFS help desk. And that is at helpdesk@sfs.ny.gov. And we have a phone number there for you as well. Those tickets are routed directly to my team, to the grants management team, who's been working with pre-qual for many, many years, and we can help you through that process. All right, next slide, please. Maybe it's not working. Okay, got it. Application process. In the eGrant system, you are going to, once you have access, you're going to go in, you're going to initiate an application, you're going to complete it, and you're going to submit the responses. The way you're going to do that is as soon as you log in, you are going to see what's called a My Opportunities section in your dashboard. And there will be one grant available there because it's the only one we have. Little link, you're going to click on that, and it's going to give you the opportunity to start an application. You'll do that. When you start it, there's some forms over on the left-hand side, and it's just a set of forms that are going to take you right through the application. You fill them out one by one, answer questions, put in, information that's being requested of you. And then when it's all complete and you have no errors, you will click the submit button. As Matt said earlier, we are not accepting any paper or email applications, and anything after the due date or time won't be considered. Again, any of our application questions should be sent to this email, which is the same one as registration. You can go ahead and put OCM eGrants application in the subject line. Really, as long as it just says OCM, it's going to help. That'll help us. But the more detail, the better. Okay, next slide, please. And this is really the meat of what I should be telling you. All of our training materials are available on the cannabis website, the Office of Cannabis Management website's reinvestment page, community reinvestment page. And again, QR coded here. We have a number of different ways to learn, video, PDFs, lots of links here, how to register, how to get pre-qualified, how to apply, more instructions on your budget, some system considerations, lots of information. If you take advantage of it, it will really help getting through the system. And with that, I think I'm turning it back over to Matt Wilson.
Yep, hang on one moment.
So while Matt gets the slides back up, I see a couple questions in the chat. First, we will be posting a recording of this bidders conference, so you will be able to see the slides again and hear this again. So if you missed something or you want to, weren't sure you got it the first time, you will have that opportunity. The second is I see quite a bit of discussion around communities disproportionately impacted or CDIs. While it is certainly our intention to support projects, programs, organizations serving communities that were disproportionately impacted by prior drug laws, you do not need to directly serve one of the CDIs as indicated in that sort of map and database you can find on the OCM website. That is certainly an excellent source, and we would be happy to receive projects that identify CDIs directly, but we also understand that the impacts of prior drug laws extended beyond cannabis arrest and beyond those particular locations. So in your application, which I will now start to cover a bit, you will have ample opportunity to explain both in narrative form as well as some of the data you input. Who is that community that you think you will be serving, and how do you understand them to have been affected by past drug laws? And we will be sort of evaluating those answers in the determination of the award, not any sort of strict connection to the CDIs. So I hope that that's helpful. Here, I want to start to cover what is really sort of the meat of applying. And you will find this section in the RFA 2.62. It is also sort of mirrored in the online eGrants system. So what you see in this section of the RFA is what you will need to answer in the online system. So sort of first is just the section A here, project description. Really all sort of basic stuff. The two things that I really want to point out is this service area or service location. So service area is your opportunity to identify by zip code where the community you will serve is located. Service location can be different than that. We often recognize that organizations, if they're offering a direct service and a brick and mortar location, that brick and mortar location may be outside of the direct communities you're trying to benefit. Perhaps it's closed, perhaps it's nearby. This is really just to let us know where that service or where you're located. But the service area is really where the grant-funded activities will take place. The next section is sort of the community and organization description. And I would describe this a bit as kind of the widest part of the funnel in your application. Here is where you get to tell us a bit about your organization as a whole, the mission and the vision of your organization, the community you're grounded in, how your organization is positioned within that community to serve youth, how your organization might relate to other organizations or services or other things in that sort of ecosystem you're operating in. This is your opportunity to tell us sort of where you're positioned, what are the gaps you're working on, how does your organization approach community. And in some ways that really sets the stage and starts to narrow us into this section C. So that's the project design, implementation, and evaluation. This section is where, in a much more narrow sense, we're looking for you to really share with us what are the interventions that you're proposing? What is the programming? What are the services? How will you outreach to community? How are you sort of culturally and linguistically sort of competent for the community you're trying to serve? What is the evidence base you're using for these services? How will you involve community, etc. But this sort of section C is where we hope to be able to really understand what is it you're trying to do in this project. Next slide, please. And then coming out of that sort of project design, we even go sort of one more sort of narrow level here to the project work plan, which is where in a much more sort of less narratively driven way, we want to hear what are the sort of concrete objectives that you're pursuing, what are the tasks you're going to do in order to achieve those objectives, and then how are you sort of measuring your own engagement and performance to know whether or not those tasks are actually contributing towards achieving those objectives. And then the next section really starts to get into the project budget. And again, I will point you to the resources we have available online that Kristen spoke about in a few slides before that you can find on the OCM Community Reinvestment webpage. In addition to a number of sort of tutorials on how to submit your application and submit your budget in the eGrants system, we also have a bit of an explainer about the different budget categories, what you might include there, and how we're sort of understanding the different budget components. One thing I will point out here is just sort of equipment. Equipment is needs to be something that is above a $5,000 threshold and is more of a tangible, good. Could be like a computer or an IT system, but something that is greater in value than $5,000. Things that are less than $5,000 are probably more appropriate to put into supplies or other costs. Next slide, please. So I want to spend a minute talking about contractual services. This is, anywhere that you will, work with another contractor to provide some sort of program-related activities. So it could be someone you're working with to do service delivery. It could be, a consultant that's going to help develop materials for your program. Could be consultants for a specific part of the project. If you're hiring, say, a small contractor to help with an event, and they're going to provide, let's say a meeting space and coffee and food for a gathering, you can include that here in the contractual services, but we do see that as a little bit different than when you're sort of subcontracting out a component of the program, like a core function of the program. When you are designating that some significant portion of the budget will go to a subcontractor in order to deliver, the program itself, that's when we ask and require a subcontractor budget. So I mentioned earlier that the lead application needs to be a 501c3 organization. But we have, of course, heard from many potential applicants that maybe they're a fiscally sponsored project, there's some other formation, or they're working on the 501c3 status. This sort of subcontractor relationship opens an opportunity for those type of applicants to work with a 501c3 who could be the lead applicant. But then in the application, you could sort of detail how the subcontractor will be responsible for delivering a significant part of the programming. And that can both be articulated in the narrative of your proposal, but then also we want to sort of see what is the budget that would be given over to the fiscally sponsored project. So for example, if your fiscally sponsored project working with your fiscal sponsor, that's a 501c3, the 501c3 organization could be the lead applicant and apply. And then in the narrative, you could explain what is the fiscally sponsored project, what is its relationship to the 501c3, what is the fiscally sponsored project seeking to do in community, how is it positioning itself, and then in the subcontractor budget, a large bulk of the funding could be designated for the fiscally sponsored project, in which case we would need to see a subcontractor's budget because we want to have some visibility into where those funds are going and how that subcontractor would be utilizing them in furtherance of the project goals. Last thing I'll point out here is just a little bit on the indirect cost. So we are anticipating that you can apply for up to 10% of the total cost for indirect costs. If you have a federally approved rate that is above a 10% indirect cost threshold, you are certainly welcome to ask for that higher amount, but we do request that you provide documentation of that federally approved rate. If you don't have that documentation, then the cap of indirect costs is 10%. Yeah, next slide, please. So there are a number of attachments that you will need to return to us through the eGrants system. One is the signed letter of attestation, which you will find in the eGrants system. It is also in the RFA. You'll need proof of your 501c3 status for the lead applicant. And again, that can be a tax determination letter or your most recent 990 tax filing. There's a significant appendix in the RFA called Appendix B. That is a number of required forms. You are also able to download that from the eGrants system. Please review that closely. There are a number of places where initials and signatures are required. So please attend to that carefully. If you are proposing a significant part of the program will be pursued by a subcontractor, then the subcontractor's budget is required. And then finally, addenda to this RFA that will be posted in the future will need to be sort of acknowledged through a signature. We are requiring, and I saw some comments about this earlier, a wet signature, and you then upload those to the OCM eGrants. We are not able at this point to take like digital signatures, like if you use DocuSign or some other digital signature like in a PDF program. So we are requiring that you actually sign in ink and then upload that. I saw some questions. What if you just apply a digital signature to it? We're asking you to please operate in good faith and apply an actual signature and then upload it. I do understand that it requires a bit more systems management of downloading, printing, signing the signature page, uploading it. I hope we can create a more efficient system in the future, but those are the constraints we're working with at this moment. Next slide, please. Yeah, so now we will come to sort of the review. So first, all applications that meet the minimum qualifications will be reviewed. So long as you meet those minimum qualifications, your application will come to OCM for a programmatic review. Our evaluation is based on the answers you provide in sort of the core part of the RFA that I covered, section 2.62, where we asked you to really detail your organization and your project and your work plan and your budget. That is what we will use in our evaluation. The RFA states that your application will be reviewed by 2 reviewers each, and we've actually shifted that, and we'll mention this in the addendum that we post following this bidders conference, that applications will actually be reviewed by 3 reviewers, and scores will be averaged across those 3 reviewers. And as listed here on the slide, this is how the points breakdown works. There's 100 points in total available, and they are distributed in our evaluation across these different sections of your answers. Next slide, please. And I mentioned earlier that it is important if you are proposing activities in more than one county to submit a separate application for each county. That is because we are instituting a 2-tier funding methodology, where what we are going to do is for each priority county and then each Empire State Development region, we will first rank and score and rank all the applications, and then the top scoring applicant in Bronx County or Erie County or Kings County, etc. The top scoring for Bronx will be awarded, then next the top for Erie, then next the top for Kings County, all the way down through each of the priority counties, and then the highest ranking applicant for each Empire State Development region. So we will go one by one, first step one, then step two, and then we will repeat step one. So now the second highest ranking applicant in Bronx and Erie and Kings and Monroe, etc. And then we'll repeat step two until we have exhausted all of the funds. There is a tiebreaker methodology. So if two applicants in the same county have the same final score, we detail the tiebreaker methodology in section 5.1. But essentially, the first tiebreaker is of the two applicants who had the higher score in the project proposal sort of category. If they're still tied, then it's who had the higher score in the project design, implementation, and evaluation section. If they're still tied, then we go a further level into how each subsection of the project design and implementation section was scored until we are able to break the tie. I won't go into more detail. You can read about it there. Yeah, sorry, next slide, I think. Yep, so that was the tiebreakers. And then final point from me is that we anticipate making notifications of the award on or about February 19th. Again, that is a projection, and we are going to do our best to honor that. But in the event that we are a little bit slower, please don't panic if you haven't heard right on February 19th. But we will do our best to notify all applicants on or about that date. And for me, this concludes my part of this presentation. And so again, I just want to thank everyone for their interest in this opportunity. And we look forward to receiving your applications. Thanks so much. Matt Porcel, back to you.
Thanks so much, Matt. Very informative. I feel like I learned a lot. Thank you so much. So as we move on here, hold on. I want to see, is it not? What's on my screen and what you guys are seeing is totally different. So let's see. No. I got a little, there we go. It unfroze. Okay, so the next section in the RFA speaks to grant funding, method of award, reporting requirements, and distribution of grant funds. I'm not going to say too much about this in the time we have left. I would continue to just say, first of all, make sure you read the RFA, read it. Learn a lot from that, more than you did from even this presentation. But with these particular sections, it talks about how we're going to award, which Matt did already kind of touch on. The grant funding, which I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, which was $5 million in total, a lot of money that's available, and some of the reporting requirements that are they're going to be expected of successful applicants are there as well. So in those particular sections, we kind of already went over some of those items already. The distribution of grant funds is $100,000 awards that are going to be given out, again, no more, no less, for the successful applicants. The Section 7 contract clauses that's in the RFA, these sections are standard clauses and requirements for all New York State grant awardees, and some of them again, these aren't specific to this particular RFA, it's just standard boilerplate language that are included in all of our grant contracts or grant solicitations. Termination, indemnification, and sexual harassment are all included, among many others. So, it's often a section that kind of gets overlooked, but it's good to know what you're going to be expected to understand when you enter into this potential contract with New York State. There is and are insurance requirements, and here is a snapshot of what they are. Again, this is included in the RFA, so you can take a look at it at your leisure. But I want to really stress that the proof of insurance coverage that we're asking for all applicants to provide are actually not due at the time of submission of the application in the eGrants system. This is a requirement that's going to ask of successful applicants at the time of award. So we'll put in an award letter to the successful applicants that, as a reminder, please now provide your proof of this coverage. And the reason we do that is we don't want applicants to bear an unnecessary financial burden for an award that they may not get. So that's the reason we do it. And if you have any questions regarding these requirements, of course, that's a question that you would submit to Jessica and/or myself. So I know we've been answering kind of some of the questions in the chat as we go along here. Now, you're going to get really tired of me saying this, but I really don't like to see applicants get disqualified because they're not pre-qualified. We don't even look at the applications, as we've mentioned many times, and you're tired of hearing it, but it's so important that you get pre-qualified in SFS. And if you're not already in SFS, then you need to register with SFS to then start the pre-qualification process. So I'll continue to stress that. For-profits and individuals, as you have seen, are not eligible for this opportunity. In the past, we've put out applications or put out RFAs for not-for-profits, and lo and behold, we still get applications for, for individuals or not-for-profit or for-profit. So if you are a for-profit or an individual, this is not an opportunity for you at this time, just as a reminder. And the contract term is 2 years. So yeah, I did misspeak. That was my mistake. It is 2 years from April 1st, 25 to 3/31/27. So that is something that I wanted to reiterate. And to keep an eye on the OGS bid calendar. That is where all of our addenda, and we will have a couple of them, that is where it will be posted in the link at the very top of the application or the document. So you don't have to go digging through. It's not at the end. It's not in the middle, somewhere buried in there. The addendums will always be at the very beginning, and those are expected to be signed by any applicants who are submitting an application in the eGrants system, attesting that oh, okay, I know the Q&A, I know what all the answers are. I've attested to any changes that we've made in the RFA. So keep an eye on that as you go forward here with your application process in eGrants. And yeah, so I think for me, I don't have anything else at this time. The reminder is attachment 3 will be removed along with some other small items that are going to be modified. So I think that may do it. We will take all of the questions that were put in the chat. We'll select them. We'll put them in a nice looking document for the Q&A that'll be posted on or about November 22nd. Keep an eye out for that. So I really appreciate everyone for being here, and we look forward to working with you.